Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming both in person and online. I am thrilled. We've got some folks here from main campus, from TTI, from across the A&M system, from Austin. So thank you. Those of you that are online, you have a chat box for later. So as questions come in, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer them towards the end. This is a casual get together. Feel free to eat while the speakers speak. They won't be offended, right?
Looking at ideas for later.
Yeah, just making us hungry. Feel free to grab a cookie and water. You also were handed a review, or I guess a feedback form, so please fill that out so that we can make this better as we go along, provide any feedback y'all have. And I am going to start with introducing Chris Anger. He's going to open us and welcome us here to the fire field. He is our Executive Associate Division Director here at SD.
Thank you, Tracy. And you know, I hear that every morning when I walk in. I just want to thank everybody for being here today. I tell you what, I've been telling Tracy for the longest time that I'm going to come and be a part of the Women of TEACS gathering, and I've not been able to do that. And so today is my first day to be here. And I was already giving Emily a hard time because we have something in common. She went to Texas Tech, I went to Texas Tech, but she actually went as a graduate student to get her law degree. So I'm poking a little bit of fun at that today because I catch a lot of grief about having a double T on my ring all the time. But
It's hard in an Aggie world.
it is. But I'll tell you what, I love being in the Aggie world. Thank y'all for coming out here to Brayton Fire Training Field. We're very proud of this place. I'm very proud to be able to host you here today. I love the fact that we are able to gather in such a fashion today because I love to hear everybody's range of perspective. And a lot of times we haven't always done that. And so the fact that you're here to be able to participate in that, I love it. And I'm glad that you're here. One of the things that I've talked to Tracy about, and I think that we don't champion this enough. I have a daughter that's 15 years old, about to turn 16 years old. Do they have an opinion? If you have teenagers, you know they have an opinion. But I'll tell you what, they're very shaped by other people's opinions. And each of you have been there. Well, my daughter has a lot of people telling her right now what she can and she can't do. And I told her, I said, as your dad, sweetheart, I don't want you to ever let somebody tell you what you're capable of or what you're not capable of doing. I said, you need to discover what you are good at and what you're capable of doing. And I think that's what we're doing by being able to be in this room and hear the things that we're championing right now. We hear what we are very good at, and then we get to hear perspectives that maybe we don't always get to hear. This is good for us. It's good for our growth. It's good for your growth. And so with that in mind today, I just want to thank our speakers who are going to be here today. Thank you for being here today and being a part of this. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Tracy so that we can get it started. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris. I forgot to thank this. I didn't do this by myself. Stand up if you helped today. I know Brandy is here and Shane and Sarah and everybody. So thank y'all. Craig is helping video, so I appreciate it. If y'all recall, when we had this last month, I opened with kind of a quote focused on, I'll never stop learning. And that's kind of one of the things coming out of these conversations is you're never done learning. Today, I have two other quotes I want to start with that again comes out of the Women of TEACS. One of them was from recently deceased Madeleine Albright, first female Secretary of State in US history. And she said, in a society where women often tear one another down, our saving grace lies in our willingness to lift one another up. Another quote, being successful doesn't necessarily make you great. What makes you great is when you reach back and help somebody else become great. I share that with you because part of another thing that comes out of the Women of TEACS group is we encourage each other. We're a sounding board, and these two women have encouraged me along my career. So that was my motivation for today. That being said, let me introduce you to these women. Lori DeVinny here in the red shirt is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for State Relations at the A&M System Office of Government Relations. She joined the A&M System family in 2000 And with her background and expertise in higher education, she focuses primarily on the appropriations bill and related legislative issues such as tuition revenue bonds, tuition and fees, and funding formulas for higher education. During the interim between legislative sessions, she monitors hearings and the formula advisory committees. She brings legislative members and staff to various campuses. And she helps the institutions to formulate their legislative appropriations requests for the next session, otherwise known as LAR. Some of you are familiar with it. During the legislative session, she works with both the institutions and the legislative appropriations committees members and staff in laying out the institution's needs and analyzing the impacts of legislative proposals and decisions. Prior to that, she spent 1988 through 2000 at the Legislative Budget Board. She had a career there as an analyst, working with the A&M system agencies and various general government agencies. She then transitioned to working full-time on the higher education budget and policy issues. And over her 12 years there, she worked closely with all areas of higher education and spent 4 years as the manager of the higher education team, overseeing all of the higher education budget and budget issues for the Legislative Budget Board. She has a bachelor's from Bethany College in History and Political Science, a Master of Public Affairs at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs, UT Austin. She was born and raised in the small town of Colby, Kansas. And she's married to Lee DeVinny. They have 3 boys, 2 of which are Aggies. So thank you, Lori. Emily Howell over here. She joined the A&M system in 2019 as Assistant Vice Chancellor for State Relations. She focuses primarily on higher education appropriations issues. She develops legislative funding initiatives. She monitors budget-related legislation and maintains relationships with key members and staff of the Texas legislature and other state agencies. But she got her start in public education as an elementary classroom teacher before attending law school. As an attorney for the Texas Legislative Council, she worked with members of the state legislature to draft bills and advise members on legislation relating to public education, state agencies, and local government. From 2015 to 19, she served as the Article 3, that's where we're funded, budget analyst in the Appropriations Committee for the Texas House of Representatives, working closely with House leadership on public and higher education budget issues. She also received her bachelor's degree from UT Austin, but we're not going to hold that against her.
No.
She found her way here. Her law degree from Texas Tech University in 2008. She is married to Dustin Howell, who is a U.S. magistrate judge for the Western District of Texas. I can't imagine your evening discussions. And they have 4 sons, so I'm sure they're busy. On a personal note, I've worked with Lori for what? I don't know, a long time, 12 years, 13, I don't know. But both Lori and Emily, I've gotten the pleasure of working with over the years. They have been mentors to me. They have encouraged me, which is why I started with some quotes on encouragement here. They have taken my incessant questions about, well, can we do this? No. Can we try this? Yes. Their patience with me, they have lifted me up and pulled me along. And I am really thrilled to have them here and hear what they have to say. They are some people I truly admire, and I'm grateful they're here. They came all the way from Austin, so let's give them a round of applause and I'll hand it over to them.
It's emotional.
I know, I have a little tear in my eye. Well, thank you very much, Tracy. That really was a generous introduction on your part. Because as you'll hear in our talk, relationships like this go both ways and we all learn from each other. And interestingly enough, both in your comments and some of the things you said, Chris, it's like you've read our notes and you know what we're going to say because your comments all fit perfectly into our message.
You've teed us up.
We
Yes.
did not get your notes.
But you definitely teed us up well. But we're going to start telling you just a little bit more about ourselves personally. Like Tracy said, I grew up in the small town in Colby, Kansas. And you can't take Kansas out of the girl, even though I'm a Texan, I've been here for longer than I ever lived in Kansas. I think there's two important things about how I grew up and where I grew up. One, it is March. It is March Madness. And that is one of the most important things of what I enjoy in terms of sports. So you'll see I'm wearing my crimson for the Kansas Jayhawks today because they play at 6:29 tonight. If anyone wants to watch. And then I will equally be rooting for the Aggies when they play next Wednesday up in Madison Square Garden. But that's part of what's important to me. The second thing is the town where I grew up is literally in the middle of nowhere. Oxford University did a study on towns and how they are in relationship to major population areas. Colby is the 9th most remote town in the United States. And the most remote town of populations 5,000 to 25,000. And why do you think that's important? Because it formed the kind of values I have, and it formed the kind of values that make me fit within the A&M system and people I meet all across the system. I think we have a really special culture and special set of shared values, whether it's the folks of TEACS, the people at A&M Commerce, the people down at A&M International. There's a really special thing we have at being part of the A&M system. And I've been here for 21 years, was welcomed here, and everyone said, welcome to our family, and I think that's true. And I'm really proud when we could bring Emily into our family because she's someone that I met in 2015 and is a great fit to our family, both as a professional and a colleague and a friend. So why don't you tell a little bit more about yourself?
Assimilating into the Aggies. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. People tease me. I do. I have degrees from UT and Tech, but I'm a Texas girl. Like Lori, I'm not a big city girl. I grew up in North Texas in a town called Burke Burnett. Yep. And that's where my whole family's from. We tease, my name is Emily Ainsworth Howell, and people tease that my mom's maiden name was Ainsworth. It sounds way fancier than we are. We are not fancy folks. But yeah, I'm a second generation college goer. My mom was an elementary school teacher, but I'm a first generation that's left on my tiny piece of Texas, and first generation to do any kind of professional school. So in that respect, I've had to kind of figure that out, navigate that. I know that's something that's scary to a lot of people when you don't have your parents or your family members to lean on about, what comes next. But that's where I am. Happy that I'm at the A&M system now, especially with Lori. Lori and I are coming in together. We work really closely together. We're together all of the time, and we are at different stages in our careers. Lori keeps reminding me, it makes me nervous that she is going to retire. She has promised me it's not going to be immediately.
It's a few years down the road.
But she's just getting me ready. But I am, I think, solidly, I'll say, in the middle kind of my career. I have a 2-year-old, so I don't want to think too closely about how many years I'm going to actually have to still work. But so we're at different points, and so I'm hoping today that we're going to be able to give you some unified advice, but from those different kind of perspectives. And so this is what we've come up with.
So as Tracy said, between the two of us, we're the mother of 7 boys. Mine are 18 through 23. So I have to work till my 18-year-old gets through college. So that's how long you've gotten. Given his track record of getting through high school, you might have longer than you think.
I'll be rooting for that.
Yeah. So we've been dealing with superheroes our whole lives. Our boys have done costumes, worn them as their actual article of clothing, played superheroes, gotten themselves hurt playing superheroes, but yet still believe they were superheroes. And so we want to talk to you all about being a superhero and the success in the workplace.
So this is the image that comes to mind first. I think we've all kind of been here, just feeling overwhelmed, whether it's family life or your work life. It probably happens more often than you want it to. It happens to me a lot right now. But so when we were kind of thinking about what to talk about today, it's, we're hoping to share some kind of strategies for when you're in this place and how to keep kind of moving forward despite these things that come up.
Yeah, and the one example I would give is, it was during a legislative session. I come home late from work, like 2 nights that week. I was on my way home the 3rd night of the week. I had fed my kids fast food already twice, and I had fast food in the car again for the 3rd night in a row. And I'm, like 3 blocks from my house with the fast food, and I get pulled over. And so the cop comes to my window and I roll it down and I burst into tears. Because I'm like, I fed my kids fast. I started explaining, going over myself. He's like, ma'am, calm down. I just wanted to tell you your tail light was out. But that's a feeling we all have sometime. And yet sometimes it just is, your tail light's out. It's not a big deal. And so hopefully we can, like Emily said, share some more thoughts about that.
So our first kind of tip, strategy.
Find your superpower. We all have them. When one of my kids, like I said, we're a basketball family. So one of my kids was getting ready to try out for the high school basketball teams. We had him working with a coach because it's really competitive, hard to get on. So the coach is working with about 5 kids. They said to him, find your superpower. We're going to work tonight to figure out what each of you offers to the basketball team as your superpower that you're pretty reliable on, that you do well. Let's find it, identify it, and figure out how you're going to use it in tryouts and how you're going to use it in games. So I sat and watched these kids for like an hour trying different things. You can see this light bulb go off when they're all like, wow, he's right. I do have a superpower. I have something that I'm special about on this team. And we all have that, whether it's in our families, we have it, but we all have it in the workplace as well. And actually, Chris, when he was talking to us before the game, he was talking about his daughter, who's a volleyball player. She has a superpower in the volleyball team. She was talking about how she sees the court better than anyone else. So, we've all got them in all sorts of places. But when I started to step back and think about my superpower in the workplace, probably the thing I do the most is take really complex issues and figure out how to present them to legislators, how to put them down on a chart to make it simple so that anybody can understand. And I see over the years, I've developed a pretty good gift in being able to do that. And I do it on behalf of the A&M system all the time, but in working across systems, because Emily's and my issues a lot of times cross with the other systems on cross-cutting higher ed issues. Kind of have been known for doing that for all that group of higher ed folks. So that's kind of where my superpower lies.
It is not mine at all. And like I said, Laurie and I, when Tracy's reading our resume, it's, like the kind of overarching thing is we're the budget ladies. We do the budget. And so we work together, but my superpower has been the same for a while. And it's just, it's nothing specific to the budget, but I think I have a pretty easy ability to just kind of get along with a lot of types of people. And, that's no small thing. I've worked with people who are really collaborative, who want to talk through things. And, I find that's easy for me. I've worked with people who are a little bit pricklier and maybe want to, be kind of the alpha person. And I've found ways to work with that. That's not Laurie, by the way, like to just let it say that's not the example, but that's kind of my superpower is to work with all of different people. And in thinking about that and in thinking about what you kind of bring to the team, I think it's important to not only kind of think about what you do well, what your particular superpower is, but to think about like the people in your orbit, whether it's your family members or for this, like the people in your office, and identify their strengths and their superpowers. And I think the reason that it's important is we all work with people that are frustrating, can maybe be a little bit frustrating, and identifying what those people do within your organization or within your office that adds value. It enables you to kind of have some grace where you otherwise not be. And that's definitely true. And we have an office of, 10, 12 people or so. And
we all bring very, very different things to the table. you know, I'm the worker bee type that in the appropriations process, says Emily, and we have people whose superpower is talking things out all the time. And sometimes I just have to get up and shut my door. But then when we come to a meeting and they've talked through these issues and they've thought about them, they're bringing something to the table that I don't have when I'm sitting in my office trying to think through these ideas and that kind of thing. So it gives me more grace to be less frustrated. And so I'm quietly shutting my doors. What I sometimes want to do is slam my door shut. But I think they're actually out there talking about issues that are important. And they need to talk through them more.
Mhm.
And that's fine. And so and I think I've grown more capable of doing that the further along I've gotten in my career, where I'm not worrying so much just about myself and how to get my superpower out there and how to, worrying about my role in the team. Stepping a bit further along in my career, it's easier to see the bigger picture and how you have to have all these different roles in the team and to really try and embrace that and help those people develop that role too.
Mhm. And it makes it a more successful organization, kind of as a whole. So another strategy is that's also important is finding ways to grow.
And this was a quote Tracy said about, I don't remember your exact quote from Madeleine Albright, but basically, if you're not growing, you're not going further, you're not improving. This is not my superpower, but I do know someone that it is their superpower. So I'll talk a little bit about this individual. A colleague of mine came to me probably about 5 years ago and said, I had been working with for a number of years and said, I really am interested in the kinds of things you're doing. And I think if I learned more about that, I could be more useful in my organization and I can be helpful to you. So she was out there seeking opportunities and looking for ways to grow. She ended up working part-time, a quarter of the time for us, and really provided some value added. The same individual at the same time was looking for other things, both within her professional world in terms of reaching out across her university, expanding things that she was, there's this thing called the cost study at the universities. It's this really complex thing that this individual wasn't responsible for, but got a group of people together to try and improve that. So always looking for ways to improve. And I really admire that about this person. This same individual has moved on in her career, not there anymore. She's at an agency where she's putting together this great group of women called Women in Teaks, because she's looking for places for other women to grow. And so Tracy here is a really good example of someone, not getting all emotional.
I feel emotional too. Yep.
Because I really admire this about her. She's out there seeking ways, not only for herself to grow, but for her teammates, her employees, and all the people of Teaks to keep growing. And that's a really important thing. Like I said, I'm not very good at it. I can look back at my career and see where, I have grown there, but I've not been seeking out opportunities like Tracy. And so be like Tracy in this.
Yeah. And I think that's the crux, is what Lori was talking about, is like really trying to create those opportunities for yourself. I'm a very good kind of volunteer. That sounds great, or I'll do this. But one of the things that Tracy does really well is just kind of come up with these like places and opportunities to grow and kind of put herself out there and do that. It's something that I'm working on as well. It is definitely not my kind of innate like superpower, but it's something that I'm working on. And it's something that I look to Tracy for while I'm doing this. Lori, in our organization, we're kind of a team of two. A lot of the time in our team meetings, it's, okay, Laurie, Emily, you do this, or, Emily and Laurie are going to do that. And so we're a team. And I think I bring some good things to the team. I have really good relationships with members and staff over in the legislature, which is not the easiest sometimes. I don't know.
And not my favorite thing to do.
but I bring that. But, Laurie's kind of superpowers, she said, is, and it's especially important in government relations work, because that's what we mostly do is, think and brainstorm and she is able to, take problems and break them down and even just kind of come up with a way visually to explain it to people. And so that's something, kind of that I'm working on, and it's uncomfortable, and I am making myself try to do this. Like Laura, I have my little spot in Laurie's office, and we sit and we'll talk about a problem, and I can kind of see her kind of like nodding, like, yep, that's a problem. Like, what are we going to do about that? I'm like, yeah, what are we going to do about that? And it's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to come up with something. Like, I'm going to try it. And so it's still, it's a nice place to be with a team, because I can work on that. I can work on that skill. I can try to grow in this. And then I always have my security blanket of Laurie here to help.
And I think Emily said one thing that's important: learning to grow is uncomfortable.
It's super uncomfortable.
It's hard. And, I know getting up here, Tracy doesn't like to talk in public very much, but she got up here and did a brilliant job. But she's learned to do something that's hard for her. I don't like to go to the Capitol and have lunch with people. I'd rather have lunch with Tracy or Emily or the people I love. But I do it, and I can do it fine. But it's nice to have Emily, because she does it well, because she's really good at relationships. So, another way to learn to grow is kind of that bond, kind of, I'm not a scientist, but when you graft something to a plant, kind of graft yourself onto someone as you're learning to do your new skill. And then that can give you a little bit of strength till you're ready to be your own independent plant on doing that.
Oh, I like that example. I've been using the security blanket example for me. I'm just grafted to Laurie. Yes, I'm doing. Just helping me sprout a little bit. Okay, so that leads into, I think, our next point pretty well.
Find a mentor or be a mentor. And we've talked some about, you can see Tracy and I have a mentor-mentee relationship, and it goes both ways. Emily and I do too. I'll tell you a little bit. I've had a mentor for 20 years. He's one of the most important people in my life in terms of both my professional life, but yet he's become a friend. One of the things that makes that mentor-mentee relationship work is finding someone you trust, who you respect, and that you can relate to on a variety of different levels. It gives depth to what you're learning professionally when you've got a broad, a relationship that just really covers so many levels. This individual has taught me how to think. He is an amazing big picture thinker. He's actually retired, but he's working for us still, because we still need his skills in this big picture thinking. And I'm not at his level, but he has certainly brought me along in my career that I'm a little further than just beginning to develop that skill, but I'm developing that skill and trying to grow that skill of how to think bigger than just the next step at hand. I'm pretty pragmatic, and I want to just do my things, but I've learned the importance of kind of stepping back and thinking. And that's hard in our world today, where we're so busy. And it was almost impossible with the world of COVID, because it's hard to call someone up or text someone and say, hey, I want to think out loud with you for a while, because it's not just the same as when you have that instant thought and you see them. So I'm really glad we're all back in the office. But that's the thing. He coincidentally is also a father to 3 boys. So I don't know if I have this boy thing going on in my world, but part of where we started bonding was over our children. And I was kind of where Emily and I are now. I had little kids. He had, college age kind of kids. So that mentor relationship has been really important to me, and it will continue to be a friendship that's important to me the rest of my life. So that's kind of my mentor experience.
Yeah. And I think some of the things that what Laurie was talking about is the mentor relationship. It doesn't have to be super formal. Like
it's not.
Yeah, it's just got to be, or even somebody like within your exact field, right? Like it can be just exactly what she said, somebody that you kind of trust, that you have respect for. That's the best kind. Obviously, yeah, I think you can see pretty clearly that, my current mentor is Laurie, which is, it's great because she's my professional mentor, but it also helps just getting through the day. You know, it's really nice to have people that you just kind of like at work too, right? And mentors can often be that. It's just, you know, like this is my person. This is my person at work that I really, really like. I have other relationships as well. You know, we talked about you're very often you're currently like a mentor, like you have a mentor and then you're a mentor to someone else. That's something that happens for me right now, like Tracy, and talking about kind of my resume. You know, I worked as an attorney for kind of a legislative related organization. And then I worked, you know, what we call like in the building. I worked like in the Capitol, and I was a committee clerk, and I was talking with people on the outside, which would be Laurie, and like making those, like staffing those people that are making the big decisions. And so now that I've kind of come out of that, I have relationships with the people that have that job, you know, now, and just trying to be that person who they can call and be like, hey, like what is going on here? What happened when this happened? And it's helpful to them, but honestly, it's really helpful to me in my current job too. Like it's really a two-way street. It's like even when I'm helping them in their new job, like I'm learning about what's effective, or learning things about my current job as well.
So our next point is keep your eye on the mission.
Yeah.
For us in the A&M system, it's pretty straightforward. It's students and the people of Texas. For you at TEKS, it is maybe the most straightforward mission in our system of the people and the citizens that you serve, the people you train, the lives that you protect through Texas Task Force 1. So it's pretty easy. Sometimes it's a little harder when you're in the accounting office to make those connections. But when you keep your eye on that, it really helps focus your day and makes you proud of what you're doing professionally. And it's important to be proud of your work. I love my job, and I am really proud of what not only I do, but I am proud of the bigger organization that I'm part of.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the harder days a little bit easier when you have that pride and that desire to keep your eye on that mission.
Now that said, it's a little harder in the legislative arena, I think, sometimes, to keep your self-focused on what the mission is. Particularly, what you see is just kind of headlines, and that is exactly, you know, what we see too, distractions, you know, like the big, like headline grabbing issues. It's, you know, guns and, you know, border security and, you know, transgender students. And it all serves to, it can be distracting from what you're doing. And I think this is what I come back to, like in the like kind of heat of all of the decision making, is keeping, you know, your eyes on that mission. A quick story about this. When a few years ago, before I came to work at the A&M system, when I was working in the Capitol and had a relationship with Laurie, I would call her and ask her about things, and she would, you know, report to me so I could report to my bosses to make decisions. You know, I knew Laurie, and I trusted Laurie. And so when she was telling me something, I knew that it was important. Like whether it was, you know, Emily, there's this writer, and, you know, writer in the budget that like tells our agency folks that they have to do this thing. I'm like, yeah, this doesn't seem like that big of a deal. And she's like, but it is. And let me tell you why. And so the neat thing that I've seen now in my changes is when I was in that position, I took her at her word. I'm like, okay, I guess this is important. So I'm going to talk to my, you know, boss about this. It wasn't until I kind of came and worked at the A&M system that I saw like, oh, this is a huge pain. We've put this in the budget. This means that, you know, this lady right over here, this is going to be weeks and weeks of her time for nothing. And so that's why it's a big deal, you know, like, and I that was one of the biggest aha moments when I came to actually work at the A&M system. And I think it goes back to kind of the pride. It's like, if you remember what we're doing, and if you remember kind of like why that matters, like it does matter.
And then just one more little anecdote, I guess, is when I left the Legislative Budget Board, I went in to tell my boss I'm going to resign, and, you know, give him my notice. He's like, what are you gonna go do? And I'm like, I'm going to work for the A&M system. And he paused. He's like, well, you're not gonna go work for the, I can't remember the exact word he used, but the most sophisticated organization out there, but you are going to work for the good guys and you're going to a really good place. And so, you know, we have that reputation of being this land grant, giant land grant thing that is out there serving the people. So, you know, that's our mission, and it's really, really important.
Yeah. So on the bad days, remember, you work for the good guys.
Yeah.
Mhm. At least you have that.
And then to close, just a reminder, you are a Wonder Woman. All of us are. And for you men out there, you are Superman. We appreciate you being here,
We do
but
appreciate it.
it's maybe easier for me to see this again at the back end of my career, that, you know, you have these days where, you know, you've got a project for your boss and it's not coming together right. And you've got 3 other things on your list, but you've got, you know, a sick kid at home or whatever, or, you know, a husband that's got meetings that can't pick up the kids, you know, that's just life. But pretty much by the end of the week, you've succeeded, you've made it through it all. Your kids are in okay shape. No one's dead. No one's got broken bones.
Mhm.
They're all fed, maybe not the healthiest. Your work products do get done, and they get done in time for your bosses to use them. Every once in a while, they may not be as perfect as you would like, but they're probably perfect enough for the decision at hand. And so just remember, you are doing your very best every day. You're doing important work every day. And you really are all amazing women out there doing that.
And it is hard. Like Lori is saying, she's like, oh, I have this perspective, you know, being kind of on the end of her career. And this is something that she's really helped me. You know, I told you, I'm solidly in the middle. I have a 2-year-old, and there's a note on my phone that tells how old I'm going to be when each of these 4 boys like graduates. It's like, oh, I'm going to be. And so this like kind of celebrating just the everyday kind of successes, I think is a harder thing for me. And it's something that, you know, I've cried more than I wanted to, being like, Lord, this has happened. You know, there are examples like sick kid, husband's gone, you know, this is like actual examples that I've called her. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And just this, like, if you do not have somebody that is your Lori, that is affirming, that's saying you're doing great, like just, if they're like a meme of like this little girl, like in the mirror, like, I love my hair, I love it. Like, just make sure you are reminding yourself, like, you're doing a great job. You are Wonder Woman. I think that's what we've
And that's it.
Yeah. That's our advice.
Any questions or any online? questions?
I'm telling some of them now, so we'll talk to you.
Oh, Julie has one.
Oh, no.
Julie's one of our.
Julie works in our office. Oh, yeah.
Do y'all know Julie? Okay, introduce yourself, Julie.
Julie Kosinski, I work with Lori and Emily, and I oversee or I help TEAS, TTI, and TEAS.
Now you can ask.
Yes, I wanted to go back to mentorship because I think it is so very important. But I think it's difficult for women to ask for that help, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about how you went about formalizing a mentorship, like a mentor, or if it's something very informal, like, you know, Lori, did you talk to Stan and be like, be my mentor? Or is it just something that kind of naturally happened in that relationship?
I think probably the only formal situation I've had is when Tracy asked to work for me part-time. And we made a formal arrangement and it became a formal thing, as well as an informal thing. I mean, it was both, but that was a formal relationship. I think other than that, like with Stanton, the person I mentioned that's been my mentor for 20 years, it was just a natural outgrowth of our relationship. And we've always had a really close relationship, both professionally and personally. And, you know, Emily's kind of a mix of things. I mean, I went out and we sought to hire her because we knew probably in the next 5 years, I'm gonna be retiring and wanted to get someone in, on the front end. So that was more of a formal relationship then, but it was kind of an informal relationship before that, I would say. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone in your organization. I mean, I can think of other women in the A&M system that I'd be like, wow, I would like to develop a closer relationship with that person. Actually, your last speaker you had last month, who is one of the most amazing women in the A&M system, if I can say I'm a fangirl.
I said it to her face, like at an event. It's like, don't be afraid. I was just like, Dr. Balbina, you're amazing. My name is Emily.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure, that makes it a little harder. I think you're right. It is a hard thing to do. But, once you find someone, go to lunch with them on a regular basis and maybe develop it in a more informal way where it evolves into that. If it's not the kind of thing you want to just say, I want your help in learning and growing as a professional.
Networking is awkward. It's super awkward. It's one of those other things. It's just like, it's hard to do. And if you just like push yourself, it's
in that learn to grow slide.
Oh, I thought you had a question. Hank has one back there.
But I have one. If you have one piece of advice that you,
We're online, Hank.
no, if you have one piece, either one of you, if you have one piece of advice that you want to give someone, a young lady who might be, in their first job in the workplace, what would it be?
Push yourself. No, I'm just saying, what I wish I would have done more was been more assertive and pushed myself a little harder early on and done these hard things to do, like reaching out to someone that's further up in the organization, say, can you have lunch with me? And can you help me learn how to do this better? I'm by nature a pretty shy individual, and I didn't do that, and I wish I would have. So if you're at the beginning of your career, find someone that's a step up, whether it's in your same chain of command or even, in a different one that is doing, is being successful and that you admire the way they do their work. Talk to them. And the other thing I guess I would say, because I'm kind of an old-fashioned individual too, is be true to yourself. Always. And don't put yourself in places you don't want to be. Remember who you are as a person and who we are as an organization, and keep your eye on those two things, and don't waver off of those. I've seen other young women that have probably made steps that weren't advantageous to them because they thought it might get them ahead, but it wasn't what they personally wanted to be doing. And that just never works out for you in the end. You got to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Anything online, Brandy? Nope. Any more questions?
I have a comment.
Comment, David.
Thanks. Emily, Laura, you guys did a great job. And I know we all appreciate what Susan did. She did a great speech last week, but you guys really brought it down to a conversational level that really helps. I wanted to talk about a couple things, the superhero, find your superhero, be a superhero. My superhero is my wife, because, I appreciate what you said when we've met and talked about presenting and stuff like that, but I'm actually kind of a social misfit. And a coworker of mine told me one time I presented at city council, and she said, well, you're quite the social misfit, aren't you? And
Nice.
I grew from that, but I'm the person who stands on the corner of the wall and doesn't engage with people in conversation if I don't know them. And so my first few, system meetings were a little bit of a challenge. And then my wife came to one of them. Well, she's like a social butterfly. And so she's going around talking to everybody. I'm just, I never get teased. And so for me, she's my mentor in getting out, kind of my superhero, and she's a Wonder Woman, so it really makes life really easy. And I think that relates also to one thing that you guys kind of alluded to, is that's recognize your own weaknesses or areas you can improve upon. And sometimes you find somebody who can link to help you kind of walk through and guide you through. And that can be at work. Tracy's a rock star. A lot of you have heard me say that. You know, she's done things for Teeks in the short time she's been here that needed to be done years and years ago, you know. And sometimes it takes a fresh lens for us to get to where we want to go. But the last thing I want to comment on is when you talk about focus on the mission.
Mhm.
You know, our motto, one of our mottos at Teeks, among the many, because we have mottos for everything here. But it's mission first and people always. And I believe that.
That's
You know,
that's
it's
really
important
good.
to stay focused on the mission, but if you don't take care of your people, the mission's not gonna happen. You know, so we always have to take care of our folks first, and then everything else gets taken care of from there. So always remember that as you do and interact with anybody in Teeks, inside or outside of Teeks, always focus on the people first, and everything else will fall into place. So thanks.
And this is why we love Teeks.
Yeah. Uh-oh, there's another slide?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not ours, okay.
So David kind of stole my thunder a little bit here on my closing remarks. I wanted to get up and say thank you, Emily and Lori, for your remarks. And I wrote a couple of things down. All of your points were excellent. And as someone who I've gone through my degrees in leadership, and one of the biggest things I've taken away in all of my, I just finished my master's degree and in leadership. But I've taken the Clifton Strengths Finder twice, once in my undergrad and then once again in my master's. And finding your strength is probably like the best thing. And I'm a big proponent as a leader to pull from people's strengths and identify their strengths. And then, you know, if you're working within your strength, that's your comfort zone, you're going to obviously shine and do better. And then you're going to bring so much more to the team as a whole. Yes, you want to grow. Yes, you want to identify the areas that you need improvement, but you don't want to focus on that, right? So, but I wanted to really highlight, like David did, on the keep your eye on the mission. I've worked for Teeks for 15 years on the admin side of Teeks. Sorry, I'm like nervous. But the admins, we do so much to support the agency. And there's a lot of admin people in this room, student registration, financial, business office. We don't always get the high praise. You know, we're like the background, the instructors get the pats on the backs, the managers for keeping the money right in their programs. And so, but I always tell my staff, and when I hire people, the mission of this agency is amazing. And we train first responders. We build up the people who build cities, who operate our wastewater, electric power. I mean, we stand up a city and we do all the serving and responding for those cities. And our job as on the admin side is to make sure the students get to class, to make sure that payments are made, to make sure we get our bills paid. And none of that would happen. None of this training would happen if we weren't here to do that. And so I always tell my staff, yeah, we're little peons, or we're just, you know, in the back room doing the data entry stuff, but we are the ones who make it happen. And we're just as much a part of the mission as anybody else. So that's part of our superpower. And I love that y'all brought that up. So anyway, I just wanted to like close us out today. We have upcoming speakers. We're doing, the next one will be in May. But then next month, April, is going to be happy hour. We're going to go back to a happy hour. And I think it's on April 20th at Public in Maine. We'll be sending out an invitation. And that's it.
Okay, I have one more comment. All right, Mike. I gotta get the last word. Though. You know what you said? Never think of yourself as minions or little people. I will tell you, as a former fire chief, and there's several of us in this room, you know, I hear from a lot of our folks and they always say, well, you know, the firefighters, they're taking care of business, doing this. And I'd say, yeah, well, how'd they get there? Well, they got there on a fire truck. Well, how'd that fire truck get there? Well, you know, responded. I said, well, you know, let me tell you something. The wheels on that fire truck don't go round and round. And like a bus, the wheels of the bus go round and round. Because those fire truck wheels don't go round and round unless other people buy that fire truck and make all that stuff happen and pay those salaries for those firefighters showing up at the front door. So the firefighters may be the end piece and the point of contact with the community, but it took everybody behind the scenes to make that happen. And every one of them are just as important as the person who pulls somebody out of the facility. So never minimize yourself. So thank you for what you do.